Welcome to Season 2, Episode 6 of Secret City Geek Lab, your resource for everything geek. We'll talk movies, TV, comic books, video games, and anything geek. I'm your host, Alan Ng, and today's show is brought to you by Lyft. Lyft is just not a normal ride-sharing app, but it's a community of drivers with cars and riders who need to get somewhere. Download the Lyft app, LYFT, and enter the code LWCLFD, and your first ride is free up to $10. Coming up this week, we've got a movie preview of Pompeii. We've got a discussion of Ms. Marvel, the new Ms. Marvel comic book, and a few other things. But up first, Pompeii. Set in 79 AD, Pompeii tells the epic story of Milo, played by Kit Harrington, a slave-turned-invincible gladiator who finds himself in a race against time to save his true love Cassia, played by Emily Browning, the beautiful daughter of a wealthy merchant who has been unwillingly betrothed to a corrupt senator, played by Kiefer Sutherland. As Mount Vesuvius erupts in a torrent of blazing lava, Milo must fight his way out of the arena in order to save his beloved as the once magnificent Pompeii crumbles around him. Pompeii stars Kit Harrington, Carrie-Anne Moss, Emily Browning, and Kiefer Sutherland, and here's a scene from Pompeii.
The mountain is going to kill us all!
She risked her life for me, Atticus. Risked everything for me!
Then we will go together.
No! You have your freedom, my friend. Now she is mine. At the harbor.
We're back. This is Secret City Geek Lab on KTSTFM. I'm Alan Ng, and we are going to talk with the stars of Pompeii about this interesting story. The first is the main star of Pompeii, and his name is Kit Harrington, and here is an interview from the most recent press junket.
I'm a former high school history teacher.
Oh, you are? Did you ever teach about Pompeii?
Well, that was world history. I taught more U.S.
Yeah.
But, you know, I was always interested in the story.
Yeah.
Do I need to slate?
Jim, would you do the ID thing?
Sure. Jim Ferguson, ABC and NBC, the state of Arizona. Okay. Well, Kid, nice to meet you, and what a wonderful job you did in Pompeii.
Thank you.
You know, the shot in 3D,
Yeah.
would you agree it's a reincarnation of an ancient tragedy? But the themes in this version of Pompeii are timeless.
Yeah, I'd say the human elements in this story are timeless. That you have a very simple love story running through it, with a young man who falls in love with a woman who he can't have through social status and social restrictions.
Almost a little Romeo and Juliet there.
A Romeo and Juliet style, yeah. And then the volcano erupts, which destroys anyone's concept of social standings.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it brings everyone to the same level. Everyone's on the same plane, and that lets them be together in a way. And I don't know. I found when I researched the story of Pompeii and how people in the city died, and looked at some of the plaster casts of people frozen in time, I found it very moving.
Amazing how it was preserved. The movie opens on a modern city and then reverts to 79 AD to Pompeii. Is that kind of to show that no city is will go on forever, perhaps, that they're all, perhaps, you never know?
I think it's even today there was a volcano that went off in Malaysia, killing 11 people.
Mm-hmm.
I think in our day and age, natural disasters are very prevalent in the news. I don't think this is making any particularly big statement about that, but it is a natural disaster movie, and I think we see that a lot on the news at the moment.
And at that time, Pompeii, am I correct, was like a resort city. It was like maybe Las Vegas.
It was like Vegas, yeah.
Yeah.
It was the Romans' Vegas, and it was like it was a place to go and it was and have fun, really.
I love the scene with you and Emily where you become a horse whisperer.
Yeah, it's a nice scene that in the stables, and he calms the horse down, and you see that maybe this is a person who doesn't understand other humans because of what he's seen of them, but he understands animals.
Mm-hmm.
I like that in the character.
I do too. And I also like, for a movie, a big epic adventure like this, you got to have a good bad guy. And I saw Kiefer Sutherland. He made it interesting, I thought.
Yeah, and it's I think you do have to have a good bad guy, but he has to have real a really selfish streak to make him fully rounded, and I think that's what Kiefer brought to it.
Yeah, he certainly did. Amazed that you've been on a lot of sets, you've done a lot of work. Amazed at the effects, as we see behind you.
I did, and what was interesting about this film is maybe we haven't made a film about Pompeii until we can do a movie justice with a volcano blowing up, and try and bring that to the screens, and a lot of it obviously we don't see until the final product. There's a wonderful team in post-production, a CGI team who bring it all to life, and so it was incredible seeing it fully rounded when they'd finished the whole thing.
Well, Kit's acting, his stunt work are unbelievable. The good cast, amazing story. If you're into history like I am, I want to see it twice. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
To me.
It was a long time ago. It was a while ago.
Yeah. Yeah, Jim Ferguson. I'm with ABC and NBC in the state of Arizona. Okay. Emily, nice to see you again. It's been a long time since Lemony Snicket.
Yeah.
But congratulations on your performance in Pompeii.
Thank you.
Did you agree with me that even though this is set in 79 AD, it's about an ancient tragedy of the city of Pompeii, that the themes from this version of it are timeless?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, especially concerning the love story, it's kind of that, it's about a class system, I suppose, and that forbidden love thing, and about the parents who don't want their child to see another person. I think that's always going to be relevant. It's the same as like Romeo and Juliet. It's that kind of, those themes will always be relevant.
And freedom.
Yeah,
political
absolutely.
Intrigue.
Yeah.
Cassie's parents are politicians struggling to build up this resort city.
Yeah,
Am I
absolutely.
right?
Yeah.
The intrigue of politics, too.
Yeah, exactly.
And many, as you said, love stories between parents and Milo. Kid is kind of a Romeo and Juliet, agree?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I can see that. I mean, it's, in a way, I think, when the volcano erupts, obviously it's horrible and tragic for everyone involved, and Cassia has to see her family members die and her city being destroyed. But at the same time, she has a moment of being free and getting to be with the person that she loves. So that's kind of an interesting thing to think about, the fact that there's all of this tragedy going on around her, but she actually has some freedom from a life that she was unable to escape before.
I really enjoyed your performance.
Thank you.
Walking in the shoes of a very strong lady, politically sharp, enjoyable for you as an actress?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I think, when I first heard about the script and saw the script, I was like, well, this seems really cool and it's such an interesting story, but I bet the girl's just going to be like this damsel in distress and she's going to be weak. And then I read it and I was really pleasantly surprised. I was like, oh, she's clever and she's sort of strong-willed, and she saves his life a couple of times, and that's sort of what that's what solidified my interest in the film. It's what attracted me to it.
And she makes it work, and damsel in distress, but she's fighting.
Yeah, exactly.
She's in there and
Yeah.
riding horses, you know.
Yeah, I think it's important to
So
see
you-
that.
The horse riding and everything with Kit. Are you ready to move to Arizona and do a Western?
I'd love to. That would be great. I love horses. I've grown up loving horses and riding when I was a kid. So
There's some nice scenes that way. You know.
yeah, I think so. I feel very comfortable with the horses. I like that stuff.
do?
Yeah.
A good cast to work with. In doing your research about this tragedy, did you learn anything about the ancient city that you didn't know before?
Yeah, I mean, I particularly wanted to learn about women and their roles in Pompeii at the time, and I was surprised to learn that they actually had a lot more autonomy than you would expect. Like, girls were allowed to represent themselves in court, and they would often not take their husband's name. They would sort of keep their father's name. I mean, it wasn't perfect, and they were definitely not equal citizens, but I just thought it was fascinating to see that, women had a lot more control at that time than they did even sort of 100 years later than that. I think that was kind of interesting.
Particularly your character, because she did give orders.
Yeah, and she has an education, and that is historically accurate. Women would go away and get their own education, which I think is really cool, because you think about a time period like this and you just assume that that's not what you think of automatically.
I have about 10 seconds.
Okay.
Working with the bad guy, Kiefer Sutherland.
Oh, it was so much fun. They were if anything, they were actually the most fun scenes, because he's so good at being
Isn't
evil.
he?
But then when he's after the cameras have stopped rolling, he's so cheeky and fun, and he's great.
Emily, I'm out of time, but I want to tell my audience, take the time to see Pompeii. Believe me, it's well worth it. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. Yeah.
Isn't it?
Hey, in a few years, probably it will be popping out of it with the technology during the interviews. Like, we'd have like bits of the film.
Did you get
Yeah.
to see the movie?
I saw it yesterday.
Oh,
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
Then you're ahead of me.
Oh, you haven't seen it yet?
Well, it's funny. I've never watched an episode of 24, so I'm not a huge fan of watching kind of stuff
Well,
that
hey,
I'm in.
24, you can't watch one. You have to watch them all. So you
Right.
can't just.
Well, then
Obviously,
I got lucky.
Yeah.
But this, obviously, I saw rough stuff of it because I had to do ADR and all that stuff. But this is the one film that I really want to see, because Paul Anderson's kind of understanding and usage of technology, I think is so extraordinary. So it's something that I will see. And I ran into him on accident on the street like 3 days ago, because we're shooting 24 here in London. And he said, yes, it's done. We finished it like 3 days ago. So you got to see the very first finished version.
Exactly. It's quite spectacular how he uses technology as a character in the film. How visible was that for you when you shot? Obviously, a little bit.
Again, and he really is a master of this. I was no more aware of what he was doing with technology than I was if we were shooting 24, or if I was shooting a commercial. He has made it so seamless for actors to be able to interact and do what they're doing. He had built sets that were 16 feet tall, so we would have a set to work on. Everything else was green screen behind it. And I think he's a genius that way. And he's one of those guys that literally, we shot the film over 5.5, 6 months. If technology changed in the middle of that 5 months, he was on it and he knew it. And when someone has that kind of tactile control over and understanding of that, they just deal with it. It's not something that's then put on everybody else. It's the only live action 3D film I've ever made, and I wasn't aware of it.
Well, because the interesting challenge, and I think he's done it really well, is to have those microcosm stories within the big spectacle. So how important was it that there's those human dynamics that still happen even in a big disaster?
Well,
catastrophe?
I think that's the key to making a great film. I think one of the problems with so many of the bigger movies is that they focus so much on making the movie bigger that they forget about the story. And when I first heard of the story, I wasn't, a love story set against, natural disaster. I was like, oh, please. But then I read it, and the writing was so beautiful, and everything starts there. If as a metaphor, if you're going to use, that's the basement of your house, and if you don't have a strong foundation, you can't build a great house. But the writing was stunning, and the character that I got to play was beautifully written, as evil as the character was.
Yeah, exactly. Potent and evil, but at the same time with his own flaws.
This was one of the guys that actually loved being evil, so he had so much fun doing it, and there was kind of a joy in it, and that's how I read it, and it was an absolute blast to play. But the technology always has to be in the background. If the story isn't working, the technology and the scope of what you can do visually doesn't matter. And I think Paul really understands that beautifully. And so there is this beautiful love story set against this tragedy. It was very Romeo and Juliet. It's very classical. And so for all of those reasons, it was a fantastic thing to be a part of.
Do you enjoy the costumes, the sets? Obviously, it's all quite spectacular.
I enjoyed the costumes more than I should admit. I was like a girl, Oh, look at this cape. And then, after about 3 months of wearing it, the cape was like 40 pounds. I mean, that's before the armor and all of the other stuff. But no, it was fantastic. I think one of the great things about being an actor is you get to go through different time periods and get to really do what we do as children naturally, which is we pretend to sword fight and we pretend to do all of these things, and now we get to do it with like all the real stuff, and it's fantastic.
How much did you really know about Pompeii? Obviously, we all know a little bit in the back of our minds, but
I
not
knew
details.
very little. I knew very little, and Paul was very kind. I still have not been, so I'm embarrassed to say that. But he gave me great books, and it was really tragic, and it was a really progressive city within the context of the Roman Empire. I mean, it was like the United States San Francisco or Europe's Paris. It was a mover and a shaker, and then it was just so heartbreaking what happened, and the more you kind of understood the lives and the intimacy, because people literally were frozen in time. Mothers holding their children where they couldn't even move from this point to that point, where it happened that fast. There's a reason why we have remembered what happened there from 79 AD till now. So the more I learned about it, it was heartbreaking, and it kind of really reinforces that love story through the film.
Totally agree. Thank you. That concludes the generic interview.
Okay.
We'll change and
This is KTSTFM. I'm Alan, and you listen to Secret City Geek Lab. Coming up next is, just want to tell you a little bit more about Lyft. Is Lyft safe? When you go out and tap your app for a ride request, the app shows you the closest driver. You'll see his name, his picture, and his rating from past drivers. When your driver arrives, you'll receive a warm fist bump. So download that app, enter the code LWCLFD, and your first 10 rides are free for up to $25 per ride. Hey, let's go on to some little Disneyland feature here. One of my favorite dining locations at Disneyland that is moderately affordable is the Plaza Inn. It's the oldest restaurant at Disneyland. Its whole design and construction was overseen by Walt Disney himself. And the only place in Disneyland where you'll find good old-fashioned comfort food, whether it's salad, pasta, or the main dishes of pot roast, fried chicken, the Plaza Inn is the place to go. And if you're looking for breakfast in the morning, you can't beat the character breakfast buffet every morning. So why don't you head down to the Plaza Inn? Yeah, so go ahead and check out that Plaza Inn down at the end of Main Street in the Disneyland Hub. If you're looking for that good old-fashioned comfort food, it'll be right there for you. Also, let's see, I'm trying to think. Usually, it is a very popular place to eat, so a good time to show up is during kind of the off hours when it's not like directly at lunchtime or dinner time. And you do need to it's a good idea to make reservations for breakfast if you decide to go there during the week. Joey Walsh, one of our regular contributors of comic book reviews, has reviewed Ms. Marvel #1. He's not here, but I'm going to let you know about what he thought about Ms. Marvel #1, brand new reboot of the Ms. Marvel title. The legend has returned. Marvel Comics presents the all-new Ms. Marvel, the groundbreaking heroine that has become an international sensation. Kamala Khan is just an ordinary girl from Jersey City until she is suddenly empowered with an extraordinary gift. But who truly is the all-new Ms. Marvel? Teenager? Muslim? Inhuman? Find out as she takes on the Marvel Universe by storm and prepares for an epic tale that will be remembered by generations to come. History is in the making now. Published February 5th, 2014, rated T+. It was written by G. Willow Wilson. The cover art is by Sarah Pichelli. I don't have the actual artist here on my notes. So here's what Joey has to say about Ms. Marvel. Right from the get-go, Marvel takes it upon themselves to remind the readers that yes, they are diversifying. In fact, almost every single page in one way or the other is a reference to the fact that Ms. Marvel, Kamala Khan, was born to a culturally involved Pakistani family. Despite her constant protests and yearning to be normal, still after that sets in, the book itself is rather quite good. It begins with Kamala meeting with a few of her friends in a convenience store before only to learn about a party later. Knowing her parents, she would be unable to attend the party, but alas, she attempted to convince her family to go and let her go anyhow. It is somewhere in between that the reader discovers the depth of her Avengers obsession, but that's unimportant right now. After being barred from the party by her parents, Kamala did the thing that teenagers do. She sneaks out of the window and goes to the party anyway. The birth of a rebel. Shortly after arriving, however, she had a dispute with one of the boys there and stormed off, deciding because of her family, she could never be normal. That is when a mysterious fog encompasses the party, and much of the city causes our heroine to lose consciousness. Now this is when things start to get interesting. Kamala fantasizes that three of her heroes, Captain America, Captain Marvel, and Iron Man, appear before her. They explain in this hallucination that she's at the crossroads in her life, where she would be forced to accept her family's supposed strange culture or just be herself. Who do you want to be? Asks Captain Marvel, and Kamala replies, I want to be you. And thus it is so. Suddenly, Kamala would regain consciousness only to find herself trapped inside a mysterious cocoon. With a couple of nicely placed punches, comes out the new Ms. Marvel. Okay, yeah, the ending is a bit strange and a little confusing maybe, but totally worth seeing Cap and Iron Man the way she fantasized about them, as being awkward. Despite its flaws and knack for beating the reader over the head with its diversity, Willow Wilson's characterization of the teenage cast was competent and appreciated, while Alfona's artwork properly expressed the lightheartedness of the issue. It is especially respected that Kamala is gorgeous without being hypersexualized. Seriously, her hair is amazing. All right, thanks, Joey, for that review. I did have a chance to read Ms. Marvel, too, and I have to agree. It's an interesting way to start a comic book series, especially an origin series, because you just wonder, is gaining your powers through a hallucination an interesting and intriguing way to get us going. And ultimately, that's what this first issue has to do, especially when you don't see the hero's powers manifest themselves until the second issue. Do you have a compelling character? Is there a compelling situation that they're in? And with the inhumanity going on, is she inhuman, or is she being given the true powers of Ms. Marvel? All right. Well, thanks a lot, Joey. Let's see. Also letting you know that coming up in April 2014, Chris Claremont, the longtime writer of the X-Men, and X-Men artist Todd Knock are coming back. Chris Claremont is credited as the creator of Nightcrawler. And in an interview with Marvel.com, he talks about the fact that he's bringing back Nightcrawler in his own series. He describes Nightcrawler as a smart, tough, creative, and daring person with an instinctive understanding of people and situations. He has a wicked sense of humor and a devastating charm, as his body is designed well outside the box of human experience. So too are his thought processes. His normal is revolutionary to most people. Throw at him a problem and he quickly finds a way to solve it that is unique to him. He quite simply is the kind of man who others trust, To know him is to have faith in him. The series about Nightcrawler trying to cope with a new world where his friends are divided and making questionable choices, i.e. Logan and Wolverine. Joining Nightcrawler on his adventure will be his longtime teammate and drinking buddy Wolverine. With Logan's involvement with the current reality check, with Logan's involvement also comes a current reality check for Kurt, as he will be aware of the deep schism has formed in the X-Men, and the last time, and that between Wolverine and Cyclops himself. Wolverine guides the impressionable young mutants to the Jean Grey school, and Kurt's closest friend, I'm just kind of not speaking very well. Kurt's closest friend at the school, Kitty Pryde, is now with Wolverine. She feels like that she may have gone over to the dark side by leaving the school. Claremont says to Kurt, without the explanation from Kitty herself, it would seem a fundamental violation of her character. Something she would never have done, especially in Excalibur, another group that they are formed together. Presumably, one of his major goals will be to find out directly from her the truth behind her decision. So that's our comic book news today. All right, going on geek news. Philip Seymour Hoffman passed away most recently. But what will his death have on the movie The Hunger Games? Lionsgate insiders say that the late Philip Seymour Hoffman had one major emotional scene left to film in his final installment of the Hunger Games series, which is The Hunger Games Mockingjay Part 2. But they expressed confidence that the filmmakers can complete the movie in a way that will satisfy fans. Lionsgate executive tells Hollywood Reporter, "We are all extraordinarily sad, but as it relates to production, it's going to have no impact. Obviously, we're going to have a couple of workaround issues, but the movie will be creatively whole. His performance in both remaining movies will be up to the best of his craft, and we feel it will be a good tribute to him." Source with ties to the project says that with the exception of one major scene in the final film, they seem to have plans that don't seem very complicated to complete both pictures without Hoffman. You can do digital things, you can have conversations where you're not focused on him, but the people he's talking to. Rob Legato, a veteran effects supervisor whose credits include The Wolf on Wall Street, says he has no specific knowledge about the Hunger Games film, but at this point, technology is most likely good enough to generate convincing images of Hoffman, though some scenes may need to be rewritten. These days, the technology of using someone's likeness is a whole lot easier to do. I won't say you could generate a Philip Seymour Hoffman with the acting ability, but you could certainly replicate him for a shot or two. Moving on, Paul Bettany is going to play the Vision in Marvel's Avengers Age of Ultron. If you know, Paul Bettany currently serves as Jarvis, Tony Stark's helpful AI system in the Iron Man movies, and he is now going to be upgraded to the Vision. If you're familiar with comic books, Vision is a member of the Avengers. He is kind of I wouldn't say a son of Ultron, but a very close relative of Ultron. Production starts next month on Avengers Age of Ultron. It's going to be directed by Joss Whedon, and cast members Robert Downey Jr. and Chris Evans will return. The Vision is an android created by the robotic villain Ultron, who is meant to be one of Ultron's henchmen, but who instead turns against him and becomes a hero. Well, this has been Season 2 of Episode 5 of Secret City Geek Lab. Come back again next week for more news and updates. Write us at secretcitygeeklab@gmail.com. And remember, our sponsor this week is Lyft. Download that app on your iOS and Android device. Until next time, have a geek week.